Well, hello, Dolly.
The tragic story of the real Johnny Bravo will leave you in tears. In 1955, Johnny had the opportunity to compete in the prestigious Mr. Olympia competition, vying for the title of the world's best bodybuilder. However, fate had a different plan in store for him. On the day of the show, Johnny found himself in last place, which shattered his confidence and sent him spiraling out of control. Overwhelmed by frustration and anger, Johnny began to attack his opponents and the judges. Chaos ensued, and the police were called to the scene. They quickly surrounded the arena, but it took over 50 officers to contain Johnny's uncontrollable rage. Eventually, they managed to restrain him, strapping him to a chair before placing him in a police car. However, Johnny's fury was far from extinguished. As he sat in the back of the police car, he unleashed his immense strength, shaking the vehicle from the inside. The car tipped over and rolled down a nearby hill, ultimately submerging in a nearby lake. Sadly, by the time rescue workers arrived, it was already too late.
The real Willy Wonka had a very dark secret. Tanka Yahari, a highly successful entrepreneur in the early 1900s, owned a chocolate factory in Philadelphia. All his workers were kids, as he preferred cheap labor. Known for being stingy with his money, Tanka offered tours of his factory, but tourists who participated in these visits mysteriously disappeared. Over 200 people vanished during these tours, never to be seen again. Due to the wealth and economic power Tanka brought to the city, no one dared to speak up out of fear. That changed when a group of 4 friends decided to take a tour of the chocolate factory. Charlie Quinn, Joseph Catalini, Murray James, and Salvador Volcano. During the guided tour led by Tanka Yahari, the 4 friends began to feel an unsettling vibe about the factory owner. At the end of the tour, they arrived at a chocolate waterfall. The group dared Joseph to push Tanka into the waterfall as a harmless prank. After being pushed, Tanka drowned, and the police were called. When Tanka's body was recovered, it had already transformed into a frozen chocolate statue. In an attempt to save him, doctors used a hammer to break through the chocolate layer. The real-life Pinocchio is actually terrifying. During the early 1900s, Pinocchio was crafted by a man named Woody Forrest, who was a well-known doll maker. Over the years, Woody grew very attached to the doll and took him everywhere he went. But in the year 1911, Woody unexpectedly passed away, and all his belongings were put up at auction, including Pinocchio. The doll was eventually bought by Cucumber, a local dentist, but he too passed just a few days later, but in very unusual circumstances. That same night, police went door to door asking the public if they saw anything unusual as of late, and few claimed to have seen a strange-looking figure running down the street, but it was too dark outside to get a good description. But just a few hours later before dawn, a call came into the police from a graveyard worker who said that there was a creepy-looking doll who is currently crying at the foot of a grave. When the police arrived, they surrounded the cemetery and approached Pinocchio. Officers on the scene claimed that the doll's head slowly did a 180 and looked back at them, and then attempted to escape, but was quickly apprehended. News of this was never made public, and the doll was sent away to an undisclosed location.
A true and dark story of Ken, a sadistic serial killer. California, 1957. His name was Kenneth Hansen. Handsome, elegant, always smiling, the model neighbor. He lived in a small suburban house with his wife Barbara. They were a discreet couple, always coordinated, always polite. Their garden was perfectly maintained, their house always impeccable, freshly painted shutters, well-tended flowers. They radiated happiness, the ideal couple. Over the years, several women in their circle disappeared. A neighbor, a colleague, a friend of Barbara's. No noise, no trace. Gradually, Barbara began confiding in those close to her. She said Kenneth would stare at her for hours at night, that he almost never blinked. He watched her as if noting her every movement. He would spend hours in their basement without coming out, but nobody believed her. Then one day, Barbara disappeared too. Kenneth declared that she had left without warning. He continued mowing the lawn, smiling at the neighbors as if nothing had happened. 3 years later, another disappearance shook the neighborhood. The victim had been seen entering Kenneth's house. The police obtained a warrant. In the basement, behind a partition, they discovered the bodies of 6 women, including Barbara. Kenneth was arrested. He offered no resistance. Always smiling, always impeccable. He was committed for life. A few years later, Mattel launched a new doll, a smooth, elegant, flawless man. His name, Ken. And in the archives of a former designer, they found a handwritten note. Inspiration, Kenneth H. Impeccable Look, American Ideal.
In 1952, in the southern part of Texas, the Porkberg family lived in extreme poverty on their small farm, which housed a large number of pigs. For unknown reasons, the family decided to conduct experiments where they tested the pigs' DNA on themselves, with a particular focus on the youngest daughter. After some time, these practices were reported to the authorities by a worker who knew the family. When the police arrested the family members for illegal activities and abuse of their own daughter, they discovered that the girl, named Pepper, exhibited disturbing traits and resembled a grotesque hybrid of human and pig. Her eyes were glassy and pig-like, her skin mottled with strange patches. During the interrogation, the family revealed an alarming motive. It was not due to a lack of money, farm problems, or mental issues, but simply from the desire to exert absolute control over themselves and their daughter. They believed that this hybrid creation would grant them ultimate power and immortality. The next day, the police returned to the Blackwood house to conduct a more detailed search. When they arrived, the officers were shocked. In the 1970s, a team of archaeologists uncovered a peculiar site in the Nevada desert. Among the ruins, they found tools that looked ancient, but were made from materials far beyond modern technology, like a club, embedded with circuitry, and a wheel that emitted faint radiation. Decades later, a whistleblower revealed classified files suggesting that the Flintstones was inspired by a secret experiment. According to the files, scientists in the 1960s feared nuclear war would wipe out humanity. To prepare, they created underground cities designed to restart civilization. But there was a catch. Participants had to live as early humans, cut off from technology, to ensure survival if modern systems failed. However, something went terribly wrong. Records hinted at conflict between groups, bizarre mutations from radiation exposure, and a shadowy figure called Mr. Slate, who reportedly controlled every aspect of the experiment. The creepiest detail? An unearthed audio recording from the site captured a faint but chilling chant, "Yabba Dabba Doo," repeated over and over. In 1953, in the small town of Updog, Texas, Dexter, a red-haired boy with thick glasses, didn't spend his days like other kids. He hid in his homemade laboratory. His family knew he was intelligent, but they didn't realize how far his curiosity had taken him. Dexter wasn't just reading books. He was testing every theory he came across, no matter how dangerous it seemed. One day, Dexter mixed a chemical he had read about. It was supposed to dissolve anything it touched. He tested it on a piece of metal, and it disappeared immediately. However, some of the chemical vapors escaped and began eating away parts of the house. Dexter then experimented with sound waves. Late at night, he sent vibrations through the air, hoping to move objects without touching them. As a result, the sound waves shook the walls of nearby houses, causing strange noises. The neighbors began talking about the weird kid on the outskirts of town. Dexter didn't care. To him, their reactions were just another part of his study. One day, a new researcher in town heard the strange rumors about Dexter. She observed him from a distance. Piecing together the odd events surrounding him, she realized that Dexter didn't care about the damage he caused. He only cared about the results. She was both fascinated and alarmed, feeling that his experiments were spiraling out of control. Dexter's final experiment was a device designed to disrupt balance. When the researcher confronted him, he didn't seem bothered. He told her that people like her simply didn't understand his genius. Then, he activated the device, causing her to feel dizzy and lose her balance. She struggled to stay on her feet as Dexter watched, taking notes on her reactions. The researcher managed to turn off the device and escape, but she was shaken. She documented everything, hoping it would stop him. Dexter's family, horrified by what they discovered, destroyed his laboratory and decided to leave town. In the small town of Moon City, Rhode Island, October 10, 1954, marked the birth of a baby named Brock Lee. For the first few months, life was ordinary, until an inexplicable man's voice echoed through their house when Brock turned 6 months old. Convinced of a haunting, Pete and Lori sought help from local paranormal investigators, but their efforts yielded nothing. Desperate, they relocated to a new home, but the mysterious voice persisted. During Brock's first birthday party, the family watched a police chase on the news. They chuckled at the striking resemblance between the pursued car and their own. To their disbelief, the chase unfolded into their neighborhood and their baby son Brock would exit the vehicle and run through the front door. He would then bark orders in a manly voice to lock all the doors and windows. As the police entered the home and arrested him, they discovered the extraordinary truth. Brock, the 1-year-old, possessed the intellect of a genius and a fully developed brain. The voice that haunted them for the past year was in fact their son's.
To hear more stories like this, be sure to like and subscribe. Thanks for tuning in.